How old is Dan Riccio? And is it Riccio or Riccio? Hi, everybody. How's it going? Good to see you. The silver lining to the whole, Rona Times calendar is that since we don't know what day it is every day can be Taco Tuesday. That's not bad. Yeah. Christmas was like last week, right? And the insurrection was like 2 years ago. 15 years of roll calls. That only feels like that, John. There's John, there's Matthew D, there's Hank, there's Brian, Eugene, Roger, Rob, Bill, Frank, Donna, Chuck, and Sloth Bear 2. The return of Sloth Bear. Thanks, everybody. Happy anniversary. To a lot of you as well. That's weird. Anyway, I got almost nothing to talk about today, believe it or not, because all I can think about is talking about the show. But who wants to do that? So we got a couple of news stories that we'll do, and then I'll, probably talk about macOS 10, I guess. I don't know. Maybe do top stories. I really have no idea. I had asked if anybody wanted to, ask any questions, and nobody did. So, yeah. I'm actually writing a couple of notes really quickly. Okay. Let's do a thing. macOS 10 at 15 years old. It is Tuesday, the 26th of January, 2021, and this is macOS 10 Live. I was supposed to wear a party hat today. Somebody said, we should make sure there's a party hat tomorrow. I don't own any party hats. Hi, I'm Ken Ray, welcoming you to another edition of macOS 10 Live, this offshoot of a show called macOS 10, which turned 15 years old this morning. Second half of the show, we'll talk about that. That'll be stream of consciousness because I got nothing to say about that. I don't even know what to say about that. Like I say, that's second half of the show. First half of the show, there is an important story out there today. And then there is also a follow-up to a story that was yesterday. So we'll do those two things really quickly. The important story is Apple has released iOS 14.4 and iPadOS 14.4. And the thing that makes those important is there are apparently 3 zero-day vulnerabilities, and so everybody needs to go and update. Usually, I'm the guy who waits a day or 2, or 3 even. But was reading a story in TechCrunch. Apple released 14.4 with 3 security vulnerabilities. With security fixes for 3 vulnerabilities said to be under active attack by hackers. It is not known who is exploiting them. It is not known who they are going after. 2 of the bugs were in WebKit. 1 is in the kernel. Some successful exploits use sets of vulnerabilities chained together rather than a single flaw. Not uncommon for attackers to first target vulnerabilities in the device's browser as a way to get access to underlying operating systems. I think TechCrunch is kind of funny here because they're like, it's a rare admission by Apple, which prides itself on its security image. Well, it's a rare thing to happen, isn't it? It's not a rare admission. I mean, I think they admit it when it's true. I think they admit it when it's a thing that happens. I guess technically it's a rare admission, but that's like, did you eat cake? No. I mean, it's not. It's as rare an admission as it is an event. In the absence of details, TechCrunch says everybody should go ahead and update to iOS 14.4 as soon as possible. I'm going to do it after the show, and I hate that. I really don't like it because I always like to make sure that things are, copacetic before updating. But this is more important than that, I suppose. As long as all of a sudden I'm not paying 5 cents a minute to use iOS 14, then I'm fine. The other story, really quickly, we talked yesterday about Dan Riccio. Riccio? We talked yesterday about Dan R., former head of hardware engineering for Apple. He's going to be working on a secret project for Apple. Lots of it was kind of gratifying, I think, because I was reading a story in iDownload blog. Christian Zebrig or Zybrig. Last names, which just start going by first names and then maybe numbers, because that would be easier for me. Christian Zybrig wrote over at iDownload blog about that move on Dan Riccio's part, or that move by Apple on Dan Riccio's part. A couple of interesting thoughts there. First of all, he's thinking, as is John Gruber, that what what Dan is going to go work on is the VR thing, the AR VR headset. Now everybody's kind of cheaping out there a tiny bit because they're saying AR VR. They're still not saying whether this is the VR thing that we heard about from Bloomberg about a week or two ago, or if this is the AR thing that we've always thought Apple was headed towards. There were a few other possibilities listed. I think I had mentioned yesterday that it probably wasn't a Bob Mansfield thing where they were like, oh yeah, no, he's going to go work on this thing. When it was really that's, sort of easing Bob Mansfield out because he was trying to retire. The things that they pointed out in this piece are in the press release. It said that Riccio was going to start a new chapter at Apple. And the thing is, where the press release was ostensibly about the executive, I was thinking they were talking about the fact that he was starting a new chapter for him. What Zebrig and also Gruber are focusing on is the fact that it's a new chapter at Apple. Like it's a new chapter for Apple. Like this is a big deal for Apple. They also think it's a big deal that they've got one guy working on one project. Somewhere in the article, it says that Apple tends to be fairly horizontal about its management. And yet they're putting this one guy on this one thing, answering only to the CEO. Not an easing out of the door for Riccio, says Gruber. He really is taking over something big and new. I still don't know which project Riccio is heading, but my guess is that it's the headset, says Gruber, not Project Titan, simply because I'm certain the headset is closer. I think it's a sign that the headset is ready to get real, and Apple wants someone as capable as Riccio to lead it, with nothing else on his plate. Makes me kind of excited because I've been very excited about, well, as we talked about here, I think last week, I've been very excited about VR for 30 years now. It's been hard to stay excited. I got excited again once we heard about Oculus Rift, and then I lost focus again. Once I actually played with Oculus Rift. It's an exciting possibility. The AR thing's an exciting possibility as well. Nobody has really asked Tim Cook about that in a while. And while I joked yesterday that somebody should burn their question on tomorrow's call and ask about Dan Riccio specifically, somebody needs to sort of like poke him again about AR. Because when he starts talking about AR, he's seen things, man. You can tell that he's seen stuff that has him really excited. The quote that I always come back to is, one day we will wonder how we lived without AR the same way we wonder how we lived without smartphones. Hopefully that's what Riccio is working on, and where he has been the guy who has been key in a lot of the hardware design. Hopefully that means we are actually getting close to, putting something on our face so that I can look like I'm talking to you when really I'm watching something on teeny tiny TVs that are this close to my eyes. And for people only listening to the audio thing, I was holding my finger and thumb very close together when I said this close to my eyes. So that's about all the news stuff I've got today. Honestly, those were the two things. The hardware thing seemed important. The software update seemed important. And there's lots of other stuff to those updates as well. Like if you have a HomePod Mini, the new iOS 14.4 does what's supposed to be a really cool handoff thing. I haven't updated either of them yet, so I'm not sure. The new watchOS update, watchOS 7.3, I believe it is, comes with the new Unity face. So that's pretty cool. macOS 11.2 is not out yet. The public beta came out yesterday, but that's not out yet for everybody. So lots of stuff to check out and update if you want to. If I was still doing Update a Go-Go, it would be an Update a Go-Go day. but I stopped doing that a while ago. So there we go. Coming up in just a minute, I'll talk about 15 years of macOS Can, and I don't know what that's going to look like exactly. And then we'll talk about the next 15 years. For people who are only listening to the audio, I'm shaking my head. First, I want to let you know about another show, though, that's coming up this week. The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac, is a fun show because I get to tackle, sometimes news of the day stuff around security, sometimes get to go in depth on one topic. This week, I'm very happy to have Stephen Warwick joining us. He is a writer for iMore. Had him on once before, talking about some hijacking going on some YouTube sites. Well, he's back to talk to us about Zoom, because Zoom, I don't know if you remember, Zoom was this incredibly wonderful thing. And then Zoom became this horribly insecure, very scary thing. And then the planet got COVID-19, and suddenly we're all using Zoom again. And the question I had for people is, well, for him actually, is it safe? Should we be going back to Zoom? Now that we're all there. What were the numbers he threw at me? I think he said 10 million. Zoom had 10 million active users in December of 2019 and 300 million by April of 2020. That's some growth. How are they handling it? Find out on Thursday. The show is called The Checklist. You're looking for Checklist 216, Zooming into 2021 with Stephen Warwick. Look for that wherever you get podcasts, or you can go to the show site, securemac.com/checklist. And oh, what a time we'll have. Right. So pretty much all I can think about today is the fact that I've been doing this for 15 years. Not this. We have not been doing the live thing for 15 years. Although if I had never quit it, we could have been doing it for 12. I was going back through every show I've done in the past. Let's do 16 years actually. Maybe even 17. 16 years ago is when I started doing a daily Apple News podcast for Scott Shepard over at Inside Mac. And, it was fine. I enjoyed doing it. You could knock out a show in about an hour and 10 minutes because there was almost no Apple News at the time. And then Scott and I had differences. And so I quit and figured maybe one day I would start a podcast of my own. And is Frank Petrie in the chat room today? Frank is one of the two people who made macOS Can happen. Because I went to Macworld 2006, and Frank pulled me aside and asked me when I was going to start doing the daily thing again. Well, I hadn't officially left Inside Mac, and I really didn't think there would be a call for it. But Frank and two or three other people, Daniel East, I know was one, said, when are you gonna? Why don't you? Are you gonna? I think August Trometer might have been one as well. He was not there at Macworld, but we're friends. And so, yeah, I got everything together. From the time I came up with the name macOS Can to the first episode coming out was about 2 weeks, I believe. It was seriously from Macworld, maybe 2 weeks later. Have no idea why I started on a Thursday, but I started on a Thursday, wrapped up the week on Friday, and then, it was full weeks after that. And then there are just all these people you meet and run into. I knew a guy who worked over at KYOU Radio, which was the radio station that turned itself all over to podcasts. And so I started another show called Technocracy Radio, which was just weird. But the cool thing about it was on the radio. And what was great about being on the radio is, first, I like being on the radio, but then also you could get guests because you were on the radio as opposed to a podcast, which was barely a thing at the time. So I did Technocracy Radio until I didn't anymore. When they stopped being regular about when it was going to be on, and then it was not as much fun to be on the radio, especially if you didn't know you were going to be. Started Day 6, which was something that a lot of people helped me get past not having money, because macOS can for the first 2 years didn't make a dime, and I thought, "I can't keep doing this unless I can get some help," and there are probably people in this chat room right now who were part of the day 6 thing, and I'll never stop being grateful because if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here right now. There was, I said, I mentioned the guy at KYOU Radio. There were these macOS Ken minutes that were happening for CBS Interactive, but they were never official. They were basically filler. Like if you ever listen to the iHeartRadio app, um, if you hear the horoscope on the iHeartRadio app, it's because they haven't sold that time. It's filler. And Stephen Page, who was one of the first people I met when I went back to San Francisco in 2003, was like, "Hey, can you give me like, 5 1-minute things every week?" And I was like, "Sure, because that'll drive up numbers." And it didn't. But occasionally some jerk would write to me about how much he hated them. So, yeah, after a while I quit that. Started doing macOS Can Live, and I think there are some people here who are actually doing that. Golly, I don't know. When did Steve Jobs pass away? It was 2011, 2010, 2011. I started about a year and a half before that, and it ran about 6 months after he passed away. It was just a thing that we would do every Wednesday night. Somewhere in there, Rod Roddenberry met Adam Christensen. Adam Christensen turned Rod onto macOS Ken. Rod liked macOS Ken, and he eventually hired me to do Mission Log, the Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Did that for about 7.5 years. This is just ridiculous. I mean, the list of things here is just nuts. And what's weird is there are all these different, I don't know. I talked on this show a long time ago about how you never know who's listening. You never know what effect it's going to have. Got an email from somebody, I can't remember who, I apologize, who said that they've been listening to me for half their life, which is cool. I know there's a guy who works in Apple now who used to listen to me when he was 13 years old. That's weird. I know a rock star now that I didn't know before macOS Ken. I know a science fiction author that I didn't know before macOS Ken. I know all you guys. It's just weird. And what's the other thing is weird. It feels strange to sit here and talk about this. But, if I were going to an office every day, there's a chance that somebody would remember it was my anniversary. And, maybe they'd, bring in a cupcake. Maybe we'd go to lunch. Of course, in hashtag these uncertain times, that wouldn't be happening. But it feels weird to go out there and go, "Hey, everybody, the thing I've been doing for 15 years. So listen to me. Talk about the thing I've been doing for 15 years, even while you're listening." I'm going to go back to the thing that I said before, though. I think my call to action on this show months ago was put yourself out there. And I can't recommend it enough. There is no part of my life right now that has not been touched, influenced, affected, changed by the fact that first Scott said, "Hey, will you do this thing?" And then I said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this thing." And that's everything from the people in my life to where I live to the people I know to all of it. Plus, it's fun to talk about Apple stuff. I was trying to think of what the biggest story is so far of these 15 years. And I don't think there is one. I mean, there is one. There are many. Logically, you could argue that Apple purchasing PA Semi is one of the biggest. I think it's one of the biggest acquisitions they've ever done, although some people, well, I mean, for the time that macOS Ken has been on, there's no question that's the biggest acquisition. What's the biggest story over the past 15 years? Buying PA Semi gets them to, the A whatever processors and the M whatever processors, and the way that they're now, taking the reins and going their own way on everything that they're doing. Steve Jobs passing away certainly could be the biggest story of Apple, although I think you might actually have to argue that Tim Cook as CEO is a bigger story than Steve Jobs passing away. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but Steve Jobs passing away is the biggest story if Apple then falters, if Apple then falls apart, the way that Enderley said that Apple was going to. He said, that's it. It's over. Walter Isaacson, as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, said Apple's best days are obviously behind it as far as creativity. And there may be some people who would still argue that. I don't think so. The iPhone. Maybe just the iPhone itself is the biggest story, or maybe we don't even know yet what the biggest story is. And certainly over the next 15 years or however long, we have no idea. I shook my head earlier, by the way. Hard to imagine doing this for another 15 years. Then again, it's hard to imagine doing anything else. So, anyway, here's to more time. That's the best I can give you. We'll finish out the week and then we'll probably do some other stuff, like next week and the week after, maybe. Sure. Why not? There probably should have been some moral there. There probably should have been some big thing. I'm going to go back to what I said before. Put yourself out there. I have no idea who's watching right now. I have no idea who's listening to this. I have no idea who's going to catch it later. And maybe that's going to mean something to me at some point, and maybe it's not. Maybe something somebody hears, they're going to say it's something to somebody else, and that's going to lead to something for them. Whatever. That's what I got. That's what I got. That and another, easily week and a half. Hey, if you're in the chat room, please stay in the chat room. I will be by momentarily. If you're not in the chat room, it's too bad. This was the day to be here because we're having cake, which we're not really, but it would have been great to have you here. But it'll be great to have you here some other time. macOS Can Live is a thing that happens live Monday through Friday, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. Check your local listings. And of course, you got macOS Can every day. You'll want to be here for tomorrow's show as well, because tomorrow will probably be about as scattered as today and yet focused. Apple's holding its earnings call tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m., about an hour and a half later. So about 30 minutes after that ends, this show goes live. So we'll talk about some of what they talk about tomorrow. Got In a Few Minutes tomorrow morning with Brian Chaffin. Got macOS Can tomorrow morning with Ken Ray. Got macOS Can Live tomorrow afternoon with you. And I'll talk to you soon. Media Cafe says Steve Jobs choosing Tim Cook the biggest story. They're kind of the same story, but okay. Let's go back up to the top. Well, not the top. Let's go back to where the show started. It would help. Huh? There we go. Start of the show. Anniversary. That's nice. That's weird. Frank says he was 12 years old when I started. A really, really bad-looking 12-year-old, Frank. I got to be honest. You look like you were rode hard and put up wet. I'm pretty sure you were 18. I can now drive in Mexico and northern Canada. macOS can. Yeah. In biblical times, I should have been married for 3 years by now. macOS can should have. South Dakota and Nebraska? Seriously? Hi, Webb. Hi, Webb's wife, Tracy. Thanks, Amy. Amy says happy 16. It's 15, I think, but starting the 16th year, which is weird. Oy. That's an interesting idea, actually, Matthew. Um, Somebody does that. Who is it? Matthew says it would be interesting to do a look back in Mac history, find a story from 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, etc. Somebody does that. Cult of Mac, maybe, or I download blog. One of the two have a This Day in Mac history thing or This Day in Apple history thing. Not as a podcast, though, so that's kind of interesting. Eugene says he hasn't used Zoom at all during the pandemic. I don't understand how. Paul, on the other hand, says he uses it every day for work. Though he's fortunate there's no reason to share a video. We actually just share somebody's screen to do a daily sprint. The Agile thing. Interesting. So you're only using it for the screen sharing? Oh, thank you, John. That's kind of you. The Mac News segment was the main reason that John listened to Inside Mac. He says the rest of it got annoying. Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed the top of the hour stuff. Mostly I ran the board on that show, but I would talk at the top of the hour and sometimes at the end of the show as well. And of course I did the news thing. Technocracy Radio. Don't forget Technocracy Radio. Didn't I say that one? I thought I did. Nah, Frank, you were 12 when we met. We talked about that. Bill, yeah, Technocracy Radio was a podcast as well. Yes. Because it was KYOU Radio, and so they were doing podcasts. It was weird. They didn't seem to know. So here's a dumb story. It doesn't really matter. Rob Black actually had a radio show on KYCY, which were technically the call letters for KYOU Radio, which was an AM radio station in San Francisco or in the Bay Area. And basically, Rob came in that day and found out that they were buying out the rest of his time and that he wasn't going to be on anymore because they were flipping to this podcast format. And he was upset. And so he got a plastic cup and he talked off the microphone like this. And he kept moving away from the microphone and basically did every bad podcaster thing you could think of. And then, and so I opened up the mic and acted stoned. Acted, I promise. And yeah, and really I thought he was going to get in trouble. Nobody knew who I was, so it didn't matter. And what actually happened was afterwards we got a call from New York from the people who are actually programming KYOU Radio. And they're like, well, if you keep being stupid, you can stay. So he got to keep his show. But we went back to doing a regular show because you couldn't be stupid all the time. Anyway, so they were programming it. It was weird because they were programming it, but they were programming it with different stuff. Ideally, what they were hoping to find were podcasts that they could develop into radio stations or radio shows. I don't know that actually ever happened from KYOU Radio, but that's how I got to do Technocracy Radio because I called Steven and I was like, can I have a particular hour of a particular day? And he said, sure. Oh, you guys are kind. Thank you for supporting Day 6. I appreciate it. iChart Radio. Did I get to iChart Radio? I might have left off before iChart Radio because that was on my list as well. It just felt weird to list all the things that I did. iChart Radio was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. That was another one of those things, though, that was it was supposed to be something else, and it just didn't grow past it. iChart Radio was supposed to support iChart Magazine, and then the magazine died, but Mike and I kept doing it for a while. Funny story, it's important to ask how things are going. I was doing so much stuff for Roddenberry. I was doing so much stuff for Mission Log. Then iChartRadio became kind of a drain, especially because it wasn't making any money. Um, I couldn't justify the amount of time it was taking, and so I pulled the plug on it. Well, actually, I asked Mike if he wanted it, if he wanted to take it over, and he said, "Sure." And so then I, like, got out, and then I heard from my salespeople that they had somebody who was buying, like, 3 months of the show, and I was already gone. Mike was kind enough, he was like, "Do you wanna take it back?" But I'd already walked away, so he got to keep that, and good for him. I think that might have been you, Nabil, that's right. Nabil says that was him who's been listening for half his life. Yeah. Here's another fun story. See, I should have told this story on the live thing. While it was recording. Joel, Joel Heflin, 5 months into macOS Ken, maybe 6 months, maybe. I get this email from this guy that I don't know, and he says, "I listen to your show every day with my girlfriend, and I want to propose to her. Can we figure out a way to get me onto your show so that I can propose to my girlfriend?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And so we concocted this dumb thing where I had done a story, and he had somebody he wanted to argue with me about on it, or wanted to disagree about on it, and so had him on, and then he proposed to her on the podcast. And I had them both on the next day because she said yes. And now they've been married for like 10 years, 12 years or something, and they have a child. And that was a weird thing to be part of. So there you go. The computer is not the same on mission log. She may have quit in solidarity. I don't know. Stefan says he's been listening for almost 15 years. Thanks for joining me for breakfast. Hey, thanks for taking me to breakfast. I think. All right. That made me smile. I'm not going to say what it was. I forgot to talk about that. Oh God. That's another one of the suppositions around Dan Riccio that they're actually grooming him to take over someday to be CEO. Although nobody really seems to think that. Everybody's like, yeah, it's possible, but I don't think so. So I guess it's okay that I left it out. All of a sudden, money seems to be on the AR VR thing. Holy cow! Bill had a creative nomad far out. I came this close to getting one of the iRiver things, and then I didn't. I got a mini disc recorder instead, which stood me in good stead for a number of years. So I let a friend borrow it, and then no, that was my DAT player. My DAT player, they blew up when they took it to Europe because they didn't have the right kind of adapter. There is no cake. I know I lied. People late, Mark, Randy, Stefan, Webb with Tracy, Paul, Amy, David, Brian, and MCO LLC. Thank you guys for being here as well. That's interesting. Ronald says one of the biggest stories might be the ending of Johnny Ive being one of the most important events. He was killing MacBooks with his thinness regime and no Steve Jobs to hold him back. It's an interesting idea. They certainly didn't want to spin the story that way, though, right? Like, there's the whole thing about how he's supposedly still working with Apple on stuff, which felt bogus when they said it. I mean, maybe it's true. I don't know. But when they were like, don't worry, he's not going to be here and he's not going to be doing stuff, but we'll still work with him on stuff. Okay. Thank you, Ronald. If you keep being stupid, you can stay. Yeah, well, that was it. They were looking to shake things up. It didn't work. It's fine. Hey, cool. Brian F. only found macOS Ken in the past 6 months, but he's thoroughly enjoyed it, and he understands why it's still here for 15 years. I love that you just found it in the past. I'm curious how you found it in the past 6 months. If you want to send me an email, I would be very curious. Info@macosken.com. INFO. You've heard it before. Info@macosken.com. Bring back the secret crypto wonder badge. That was something that was done in partnership with a couple of other developers. I didn't realize it was gone until long after it was gone. I miss hearing Mike LaPlante on iChart Radio. So do I. Well, I miss doing the show with Mike. It's I love the idea of something that I do going on after me, but I can't listen to it. I listened to a few episodes of iChart Radio, and I kept feeling bad that I had walked away from it. Also, I have a certain style of editing that can sometimes make it difficult to listen to. Mike has done in a few minutes, but I would certainly be more than happy to have him back. In fact, now that you've said that, I'll probably call him and see. I believe next week is Allison Sheridan. We're trying to get together on that, but I can call Mike for the week after that, hopefully. And let's see, Bart Bouchatz is going to be on at some point, and the gentleman that I just mentioned earlier, Stephen Warwick, who is was kind enough to tell me that he was 10 when macOS Ken started, because I was telling him the day that it was 15. He was like, "Oh, I was 10 years old." I'm like, "Okay, we get it. You're young." Anyway. Hey, Mark Fucio's here. Hello, Mark. I agree about Ives hurting products. With his obsession on thinness. Give us 1 millimeter thicker and lots of extra battery time. Yeah. Bring back a port or two. I will also, you see, that's the thing, Stefan. I will also be 65 in 15 years. Hard to imagine, but it's hard to imagine not. So we'll see. Yeah, it's because it didn't make the jump from the 32 to 64. I'm sorry, John. Sorry, secret crypto wonder badge stuff. How about that Apple stock price, says Vern. Hello, Vern. Yeah, another closing high. Didn't hit the intraday high today. I'm curious what's going to happen Thursday. Not making any guesses, but I'm curious what's going to happen Thursday. That whole game. I know I talk about it a lot, but that whole game. Anyway, I have to go turn what we just did into an audio show, and then I have to work on tomorrow's macOS Ken. Did I see Chuck up there? I did see Chuck up there. Chuck had an iRiver for recording. Far out. Wow. And Eugene is saying the iOS update is done. Didn't brick. Looking for his first app tracking transparency notification. Should I try Facebook? That's funny. And I won't answer that question. I'll be curious, though, to see if they start popping up. Oh, I'm not making a living doing things on YouTube. Redneck Tech 70. I'm not. I don't know why I'm doing this exactly. It's fun. I mean, I like hanging out with you guys. That's a large part of it. And also, it's a different, what's the word I'm looking for? Discipline. It's a different discipline. It gets my brain working in different ways, which is fun. But yeah, I don't imagine I will ever get a dime from YouTube. It's fantastically fun and really worth doing. But anyway, right. Everybody's saying goodbye because I said goodbye a minute ago, so I should really say goodbye now. Webb, Tracy, pleasure to meet you. Everybody else. Um, yeah, what Donna said. Hope everybody has a great evening, night, day. Let's do this again tomorrow. Earnings call. Rest up. Be sure and eat your Flintstones. Talk to you soon.